Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back to Maximize Monday. It's been a busy few weeks, so apologies for not being with you last Monday, but I was on the road for like 7 of the last 10 work days. So I had a lot going on, but I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to have Kasia back here with me. If you're watched the show before, you know that she's been on in the past. And last time we just kind of scratched the surface of your focus on corporate healing. So I reached back out to you just because I've always told you, and I message you this when it happens, but your posts really resonate with me, and I'm sure they resonate with others as well, since you have such a strong network and good support system. So I wanted to have you back on to dig a little deeper into corporate healing, just because we were talking right before we started recording here that self-care is so important, and it's never been one thing that's prioritized more than anything else. And we've talked about how important it is to start prioritizing that. So I wanted to get your insights, and you can share some advice to those who are looking to get started and taking care of themselves a little better in the workplace.
Beautiful. Well, Matt, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. I feel like our conversations go quite deep quite quickly, and so the 30-minute slot is perfect. To give some value and to share, what I guess a message that someone may need to hear today,
Yeah,
right? Which is really what you're doing. So love the podcast and love the work you're doing outside the scope of your day-to-day work. So thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it. I know, and I asked you this last time, but want to touch on this again. In terms of describing your role as a corporate healer, because people will look at that and say, how's that different from like a career coach or a professional development trainer? And so, how do you try to prioritize that professional growth, support development, but you're offering services that are different than your traditional career coaching service might be?
It definitely is a little different. And maybe I can start by sharing, pardon me, a little bit on how I kind of created the role and why I felt like corporate healing was the right thing to be bringing in right now. I've experienced firsthand, and also witnessed the challenges of misalignment, of being misalignment, being in the wrong role, being in an environment that doesn't necessarily support that growth.
Mhm.
Um, and also the internal misalignment, right? The one that stems from yourself. Because when you're misaligned in yourself, your, values aren't aligned to the role that you're in, or, you're pushing yourself too hard and something that doesn't feel right, right? You're not energized by the work that you do. When there's that internal misalignment, it impacts every aspect of oneself.
Right.
And that includes work, that includes professional life. It um, really has a tangible impact on people's life.
Yeah.
And so I found and used spirituality to help me rediscover myself, to rebuild the relationship that I had with myself. Alongside that came confidence and self-trust and a love for life and a zest for life.
Mhm.
And all, being able to find gratitude and joy in all of these little moments.
Right.
And so that actually was a catalyst for transforming my life. So the foundation that I take in working with people is absolutely built on a spiritual approach.
Yeah.
Um, because the foundation that someone builds on is extremely important. And in my opinion, it's really hard to make meaningful change on the outside when you haven't made that meaningful change on the inside first.
Mhm.
So being able to take everything that I've learned, take the key teachings of, spirituality, and then living life through this is one of the ways that I help professionals now.
Mhm.
Um, so really thinking about helping people change their circumstances or create better circumstances for themselves,
Right.
whether it's professional or personal. Um, Healing is underrated. I
Mhm.
think it's becoming more mainstream now. So when people see like corporate healer, they're not like, what does she mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of inferring that, okay, like we're here to do the grow, to do
Mhm.
some inner work and to grow as people, right?
Right.
So it just felt like the right time to come out with my perspectives. One of them being that mindset isn't everything. LinkedIn is now kind of becoming very similar, I think, in content.
Yeah.
A lot of same sales tips being regurgitated. It's all about mindset. Mindset is a key piece of it, but one of my foundational pillars is that it's not the only thing that matters, right? So to wrap up the question, unlike traditional coaching, I try to get to the root of people's energetic blocks. So the reasons, the deep-rooted reasons that someone is engaging in self-sabotage, and help people shift their own identity. This is done by understanding their power and who they are and their ability to create and then owning that, right? And I use a bunch of different modalities, emotional healing, I've got energetic healing. So I actually host in-person one-to-one sessions with individuals. And, there are aspects of ourselves that we can't see.
Mhm.
And these healings work on those aspects, right? It's on the energetic aspects of ourselves that are invisible to the human touch, but we all know it. We all know when that one person walks into the room, they command the room. It's their energy speaking,
Right.
right? So I believe true transformation comes from understanding your emotional landscape and being connected to that, being connected to yourself,
Mhm.
having built a really strong foundation for your life, and then starting to make slightly different, um, what are they called? Decisions if you're not satisfied with your life. So
Yes.
that's what I see often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned about the content on LinkedIn and seeing a lot of repetitiveness now. And I always try to tell people that just because from the recruiting and hiring perspective, I see that a lot. There's a lot of obviously there's a lot of us out there and we all talk about best practices, but I always say there's not a one size fits all approach to job searching or hiring or interviewing. And obviously, that's going to be the case with corporate healing as well. You have to strategize that with each person that you're working with. So, how do you go into that initial assessment? What are the things when you're supporting a client, finding areas of healing that's needed that they might not have thought of, especially from a professional environment, because it's tough to separate personal and professionalism, right? And know what's going to be best for me personally might not be the same as what's best for me professionally. So how do you start to dig into that?
I couldn't agree more. Um, One of the ways that I always start everything is a conversation,
Mhm.
right? Like a true active listening conversation, because as I mentioned before, like the energy that you approach people with, um, it really dictates how they're going to feel in your presence. And so that's why, I've heard stories of people like, I reached out to this coach and man, it was cold and it was different. And it's like, how much are those coaches, what's their MO in a
Mhm.
way? I have a role, I have a full-time job that pays my bills and that lets me live a wonderful life. And the reason that I am so passionate about bringing this in is because people want to feel safe and as though there's an area for them to express things that they may not feel comfortable sharing, even in their own friend groups, within their families. And so it's almost this like I guess paradox where you're able to open up to a stranger, sometimes even more than your own circle or group, right?
Yeah.
And obviously at work for professional reasons, right? We can't always say everything. But in terms of approaching and working with people, it really is that people feel like they can open up to me. And I think that a large part of that comes from the authentic life I live, right? It's not just about how you show up, it's also about how you live. And so being able to lead with that, and I try to embody that in my work, of course, as well, of how I show up, people can sense that. And I think that they see that there's something different about my approach.
Mhm.
And the reality is it is a spiritually, it's a time tested path that
Yeah.
I'm sharing with people. It's worked for thousands of years and it's not something that, was made in Joe's garage. I think we
Right.
mentioned that last time.
Yeah.
So really starting with the conversations and understanding like where is someone, usually there is an aspect of reading between the lines because now we're starting to get into the heart. Usually a conversation will start and people are like, well, this is objectively what I don't like about my life.
Yeah.
As the conversation goes on, you see people soften into their hearts.
Hmm.
And by the end of the conversation, they start to uncover what is really not ideal about their situation. Sometimes they don't even know that before a conversation with me. I've
Definitely.
had so many conversations with people, and that's just what it is. It's just a conversation, and they'll leave and like make a one switch or one minor thing that I've advised them to do. Maybe it's like a clarity on their desired role, right, for the job seekers, and like they'll come back to me a few weeks later, like I'm in this awesome role now, and I implemented some of what you shared. So
Hmm.
words go a really long way, but then it also does go into, like I mentioned, feeling the energy behind someone. Are they approaching you all frazzled and they can't, they're having a hard time like just finishing one story because they're kind of scattered?
Yeah.
Well, there's actually like a healing I can offer for them if they're in the greater Toronto area, right? Like there's something that can help collect that energy and ground you. And then it's like, is someone feeling lethargic and that energy is low, maybe they're experiencing some depression without saying it. um what is the root of that block? And so there's this intuitive assessment that comes into play. um yeah, and pardon me, and just kind of working with the client, because it's always about the client. I love to work one-on-one with people, although I am also I've started to put together kind of a community program that I'll be releasing around May,
Awesome.
which I can speak to at the end of the call here, just in case anyone's interested. But yeah, definitely one-on-one work. It all goes back to the heart.
Right. Absolutely. So, want to dive into that a little bit deeper here because, obviously, I think we talked about this last time that people are starting to prioritize work-life balance, but, what does that even mean when you ask people? Sometimes they don't even know. And when you're talking about healing at work, you say, what's the issue at work? And workplace stress is probably a common thing that people mention, but that can mean so many different things, right? There's so many different factors that could attribute to stress in your workplace environment that you might not even be aware of. So, what techniques do you use not to just get people to, look into that, but get them to look past that too? Is not just, okay, if you're stressed at work, let's dig into what's making those stressors and how can I support them and help them, with that emotional health that comes with growing there.
I feel like what I've seen, what I've experienced, and my overall sentiment on workplace stress is that, because how often does someone come to you and they say, like, my boss is the worst? And people quit bosses, not jobs. Um, Sometimes that's absolutely valid. And having a supportive network at work is one of the foundational things that you can do for yourself.
Mhm.
Um, Especially from a respect place, right? You respect yourself enough not to put yourself into a situation, or at least to maintain a situation that's like not um helping your well-being, right?
Right.
um but what I also feel undeniably true is that how much of that misalignment is still kind of coming from you. How much of that stress is coming from you? Are you not meeting your own expectations? Are you even aware of your expectations? And like I feel like, especially for high performers, um there's this like, oh, I hit 150% of my number, but it's still not enough because now
Right.
I'm leaving like next level accelerators on the table. And it's the game of always wanting more.
Mhm.
And honestly, the cure to that is gratitude,
Yeah.
because without gratitude you will never have enough. And so if you're always hyper focused on the future and what's next, instead of also recognizing that, the blessings that you have in the present moment, and being grateful for that, no matter how big, no matter how small,
Yeah.
um, that's when you start to actually reprogram your mind to notice more of the good things. And it actually is something that can break the stress cycle. But of course, we can't talk about that without talking about the body. A lot of stress is also held within the body.
Mhm.
So things like meditation and breath work are very helpful for, especially those moments where uh anxiety or stress is high and you really need to regulate. And so learning how to regulate yourself when you're experiencing those moments is one of the greatest tools that you can do, especially as a leader, because then um you get to lead people with clarity, right?
Right.
Because you're not allowing yourself to get swept up in the emotions behind impactful decision making.
Mm.
So meditation is also very important because it's not about the meditation. And I speak with so many people who are like, meditation is boring. And guys, I totally agree. Like, it was not a fun time at the beginning, like sitting in stillness and trying to train your monkey mind. But what it is it's training.
Yeah.
You wouldn't show up to an executive presentation without having practiced.
Mhm.
And what meditation does for people is that it actually allows them to build focus and build discipline. Even if you start with 5 minutes a day, a lot of benefits are unlocked at the 20-minute mark. However, this is a free tool. I love, there's an abundance meditation by, oh man, who was it? Um, oh, I can't remember. It wasn't Joe Dispenza, but I'll send you
Yeah.
I like to put it on every once in a while, and I can't believe the name's escaping me. Bob Proctor.
There you go.
Bob Proctor. And it's just a really impactful one. It's about 20 minutes long, and you know, what you make time for is what you value, right? So meditation, breath work is great. You can also work with coaches for breath work. You can find, teachings online. Reframing techniques are also something that with time you can work on, and it really helps to shift your perspective on what stress is.
Right.
And lastly, of course, is like the actual energetic clearing and healing sessions. This is something that can lower the stress in your body that is being held and harbored in different ways and in different areas.
Definitely.
Prevents the buildup of stress from getting worse, right? And
Mhm.
when I talk about that, I'm compelled to speak about expanding your capacity because everyone has a threshold for stress. Everyone has a certain amount that they can handle, and they're like, okay, this is fine. What some people will notice is that if they like drop a pencil, they'll drop a pencil and they'll have a full-blown meltdown. I use that example because that used to be me about 5 years ago. I would like drop a pencil and have a full-blown meltdown that I had to bend over and pick up the pencil. And
Mm.
it's preposterous, but it signals that your capacity, excuse me, that your capacity is just non-existent to
Right.
handle challenge, you know? That's
Ab-
where I'll end.
Absolutely. So, I mean, when I reached out to you a while ago to first invite you to be on the show, I pointed to the content creation and how authentic and genuine you are with what you share. And that's, I think, a good segue into my next question here, because I've always pointed to that from my recruiting style. My style is very different. I do share a lot, probably overshare in some instances, but I like to give people that kind of glimpse into who Matt is as a recruiter, since they're going to be working with me. And, for you as someone who's going to be offering coaching and healing, obviously you need that trust to be built. So how do you work to get them to open up initially? Because, it's that trust needs to be earned very early on in order to be effective. And do you attribute the content that you're creating, the authenticity and genuinity of that as, helpful in terms of getting people to connect with you early on?
Absolutely. I feel like there's something about vulnerability that's undeniable and makes people um, pay attention
Mhm.
to whatever's being shared. And authenticity is just how I live my life. So it's kind of a natural expectation that my content does share that as well. And, especially now, like I commented on a post the other day. It's like, it's so easy to tell when something has been AI generated. Like, it's so easy now. And so, not gonna lie, sometimes we need help with the hook. But in terms of sharing stories and sharing your own journey transparently, like that goes a really long way because there are so many people who have experienced the same or similar journeys or stories or experiences or like defining moments
Mhm.
that when you are able to communicate that effectively online, like I said, people pay attention and people not they don't just feel like you get them. They're like, oh my gosh, she gets it because it's like a visceral reaction. I've had that while reading some content or scrolling through Instagram and just that whole body feeling of like this person understands me and is likely to understand my challenges.
Mm,
Um, creating a safe and judgmental free zone is also super important because it all goes back to the person who, you're sitting with and you're working with. And it gets a little harder in group settings, but there are key messages that honestly relate with everyone.
mhm,
And then, there are techniques that I've learned to help build comfort and connection. And one of the easiest examples I'll give, I don't know if I gave this last time, but when I'm at the grocery store and I prefer the person checking me out versus self-checkout. And I'll go up to them and we'll exchange pleasantries and I'll be like, thank you so much for helping me, Sandra, or whatever their name is. And they'll just like take a minute and
mhm.
be like, oh, someone called my name. Like, because our names are so personal and it's one of the fastest ways that you can show someone that you see them.
Yeah.
And uh that's like one of my underrated hacks for anyone who's like trying to just learn to go through life with a more open heart,
Mhm.
connect human to human and heart to heart. It can start with just thanking someone and mentioning their name in it. I guarantee they're going to catch people off guard, but that they'll love it. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, on the other side of that, I mean, I talked about how I probably overshare and sometimes, but I don't share everything about me. Obviously, you can't do that. So, for someone like yourself who is genuine, authentic, but at the same time, you need to develop personal, professional boundaries. How do you go about maintaining those, creating content that gives a glimpse, earns trusts, but, you know, unlike me, not oversharing, keeping it kind of where you feel comfortable. Because I think that's where a lot of people struggle when it comes to, being their authentic voice on a social media platform is how much is too much, or where do I limit myself?
showing up online was like a step-by-step process for me because similar to you, Matt, I'm pretty unhinged at times, believe it or not, but I'm so passionate about like certain I guess beliefs I have, but those beliefs have been checked and tested, right? They're not just opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what ended up happening was in order to feel comfortable showing up online, like it started with one post a week and it was very like, this is what happened at work last week. And over time it developed into sharing more about actually my story and how in the past I like, was at 0% attainment. And then I started developing my spirituality, had a couple of like healing sessions and started to learn a little bit more about how I can create my reality. And suddenly I was like top performer on the team, got promoted, within I think like 8 months of that transformation into this ideal role on this ideal team. And um, it gets easier, but really it is about reps and putting the reps in because we live in a world of action and action is undeniably the only thing that will actually move us forward. Clarity and all of that matters, but without the action, you will get nowhere.
Right.
So that's just a tip for anyone who's like, how do I share my authentic self? It's like start small,
Yeah.
maybe a personal story about something and like an opinion or a belief that you had uh, about that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of working with people, very simple, clear structure and boundaries of what I'm there to do. I always say that a healer is someone who helps facilitate healing, but I don't do the healing work for you. That's something that an individual has to choose and commit to. I will be there and I'll provide different modalities and I can actually do work one-on-one with you that'll help clear, but it's also on you, right? It's on you to want that growth and to desire a better life for yourself, which means putting in the work, right? So that aspect of self accountability and self responsibility is very important that my clients have, and I'll turn people away if I feel like they're going to be projecting
Yeah.
their stuff on me, right? Because I'm not here to rescue people. I am here to guide people who want to help themselves.
Sure.
And then with that, not taking their emotions on as my own. I
Mhm.
had really poor boundaries when I was younger. So that took a lot of work, but boundaries are a signal that you love and respect yourself and that you're willing to protect yourself.
Mhm.
And if you struggle with boundaries, I usually say there's probably some low self-esteem or low confidence because you're not willing to uphold things that are really about your benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so perfect segue then into the final question. And when it comes to corporate healing, a lot of times the expectations are since you do it, live a lot of what you're trying to coach and support people on. So how do you try to do that? Because that's easier said than done, right? It's easier to provide guidance to others at times than to do that self-reflection and determine what you need to grow emotionally and professionally. So what are some of the things that you try to do to, heal yourself and provide yourself this emotional support?
I love this question, and it's so valid because healing is such a journey. And, I am farther along in my journey than I was years ago. And it's always going to be the case. Like, I'm never going to be at an end destination, and that is part of life, right? And so, one of the things that I want to call out is that I spent many, many years, 5 years doing the work, going away to silent retreats and um, developing a meditation practice that grounds me every day, using energetic rituals that help protect and maintain and expand my energy, um, as well as receiving different healings over the years and um, a lot of introspective work because nobody can do this work for you.
Mm,
And so, my claims are not that I will, heal you or anything like that. The claim is that I have tools that can help your own process of healing because if someone did it for you, you wouldn't value it.
mhm.
You
Right.
wouldn't value it. It's like free stuff. Like how many times have you like downloaded a freebie or something that someone's giving away and then like not even look at it when it actually arrives in your email?
Right.
People don't value free. And so I've actually shifted my business away from giving anything almost away for free because um people just don't value it in the same way as when they have to invest to grow or to
Right.
get a different outcome. Like um those people are the ones that actually are meant to work with me.
Mhm.
And so, in terms of how do I maintain myself, it took a lot of trial and error. It took many, many years to get to a place where I meditate regularly, where, I can pause before reacting. The emotional reactivity, um, 180 that I've done is just night and day because I used to be so angry and so easily upset.
Mhm.
Like it wouldn't even matter what happened. It would just be like an angry reaction. And that's not the kind of life I wanted to live. That wasn't the kind of woman I wanted to be. You know, um in those days I was like, well, who would even be attracted to that? Like no one, right? So what how we present ourselves on the outside matters,
Yeah.
but also the work that we've done on ourselves internally, the stuff that people can't see, the ugly nights crying and releasing your emotions, and feeling and connecting with people who can support you through that process, that all really matters. And so, um, some people it's journaling, some people it's yoga, some people it's like find what works for you. And it might take you a little longer to find, but I also teach and offer and have tools that will work on everyone, regardless of their race, religion, age, income level, um, you know, all of us or none of us, right? We all have to like um we all want better for ourselves.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
so that's really what I try to lead by example, and I do a really good job at it,
Yeah,
humbly, I will say.
you do.
But lastly, I want to share that that accountability piece is really important for everyone.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was thinking about was like, well, how can I make an impact for maybe a few, like more people than sometimes my bandwidth allows me to only work with a handful of one-on-one clients.
Mhm.
How can I make more of an impact that will help people build the foundation to living the life that they wish to live. Similarly, adopt similar habits as to what I have. And that's through this cohort program. I'm still working on the name. It's still in fairly early days, but it's going to be essentially a cohort program for 28 days or 4 weeks, where every day there's a little bit of a learning that's delivered to you, and then a 10-minute meditation or an integration activity that is done on your own. But at the end of that week, we come together as a group. So in the cohort group, and I'll lead a conversation around it. And it's really meant to be an accountability style way that you can set that foundation for your life, align your energy, and expand into this version of yourself. And it really isn't limited,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
The last thing I want to say is that, do I have a niche? Like anyone who wants to heal. I found it really difficult when starting my business to uh, develop it, because all the feedback out there is like, you want to find one avatar, speak to one avatar. The reality is, with this work, it doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
It goes deeper than that, and there are so many people who want to do this work, they just don't know how. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm there for. I'm here to help people on their healing journey. It's a very personal journey. I lead by example, and the cohort style launching in May is going to be a perfect way that people can actually experience some of that for
Awesome.
their own, of my wisdom, spiritual teachings, and ancient wisdom into their day to day in a way that's not overwhelming.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's a fantastic resource that would be offered out. And then so before I let you go, I always like to give some time, take some time to talk about where people can find you, where they can follow you, how they can get in touch with you if they want to explore, corporate healing for themselves.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate that. So my name is Kasia. I also go by the username at Cashflow Positive, Cash with a K. That was really on brand when I kind of secured that name. Really, thinking about the flow of life and what kind of life you want to live in the positive direction. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kasia Polkowski, and also, I have my contact information on my LinkedIn profile. I'm on Instagram, and I'm also going to be launching a corporate healing series on YouTube in the coming weeks. I've been saying that for a little bit of time, but I'm really committed to doing it, just to be able to share, perspectives on healing in the workplace. So very similar to what we did today. And so
Yeah.
that'll be on YouTube. My username there, I believe, is Cashflow Positive as well. And yeah, just very excited. Anyone who wants to have a conversation is always welcome to reach out, of course.
Awesome. Well, I thank you again for the time. It's always nice to have you on the show and talk about these things. So appreciative of that. If you're not following Kasia, make sure that you are. I will make sure to tag her in the videos as they get posted. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you.